I feel like we rambled so much that we...
I don't even know what the fuck we talked about. It's the podcast that Shifty Serpent warned you about.
Welcome to Biting All the Apples, where two gals discuss one radical book.
The best-selling, critical, and comedic masterpiece from 1895, The Women's Bible by Elizabeth Cady Stanton. I'm Sarah Kay.
I'm Joanna V.
And holy moly, beautiful listeners, have we got a royally raucous chapter ride for you today. Mm-hmm. The Victorian feminists take on the Book of Kings. Yes, that's kings plural because there are a lot of them. But for every king, there are dozens, maybe even hundreds more wives, concubines, and nameless women. We'll hear about the first mention of resurrection, the influence of astrology, and we'll discuss the pre-biblical origins of the famous "we'll just cut the baby in half" tale. That's always so funny.
I love it.
That's the one that made that's the tale that made King Solomon famous. But to be honest, we'll probably talk more about the Queen of Sheba than anything else. Mm-hmm. Before we begin, we'll remind you of the law of our podcast kingdom with some disclaimers.
I love our world. Biting All the Apples covers analysis of religious texts. Some listeners that are religious out of the need for the illusion of certainty may find the content offensive. Biting All the Apples also discusses historic texts and feminist movements. We recognize that individuals, groups, and alternative movements have been left out of the mainstream history, and we will note that whenever possible. We are open to additional information provided to us in the spirit of expanding our knowledge.
Yes. In that spirit, we're recording this at the Spirit Hour.
We are. Is that really a thing? I feel spirity.
It is now.
I love it.
It is now.
Yes.
Truly.
Yeah, it's late, but it's summer.
Yeah, and we're here in Michigan, so really the sun's still out.
Yeah, I mean, we really do get the sunlight here.
That's what we're known for.
Yeah, it is. I didn't realize how much it is a thing until I lived on the West Coast. And I was like, why is it dark so early?
Yeah.
And then I was like, I got to move back to Michigan. And here I am.
And make a podcast.
And I'm going to make a podcast with another fellow Michigander.
Michiganders rule.
Rock and roll.
So,
yeah, I'm excited for this week.
I'm excited for this week, too, because this is another...
You like kings? You love kings? Do you want a king?
Kings.
You looking for a king? Were you looking for a king to tell you what to do?
I'm like, I need a king to tell me what to do.
I thought you might.
And this chapter did not disappoint.
It didn't. It's actually, again, I hate saying this because I said it some last week, but relevant, you know?
Yeah, let's talk about it.
Well, some people are planning a no kings national protest right now, and here we are reading Book of Kings. Isn't it ironic?
It's ironic. It's also great timing. I'm glad we're recording this.
Right?
Before
the no kings
Before
day.
We can't have any kings.
Right? Because we have to talk about kings.
We should be good.
I think we'll be safe. It's not till June 14th.
Right. So after this week, we're not talking about kings anymore.
No more.
Kings. That demonstration is that the one on June
14th? Nationwide.
That's coming right up.
It's coming right up.
Wow.
What a celebration.
So this is very relevant.
Yeah. Especially, I think there's, someone's planning a military parade, I think, too. Same day. It's weird.
It's going to be just like
coinciding. Just like the book.
I wish people could see your hand motion. We got to get video on
We're
this.
Gonna, next, yeah, video.
The hand motion for coinciding. Just imagine it.
Yes. Yeah, what would you do if you had hand motions for coinciding? It's the same.
Please send us your video responses.
Oh my gosh.
So the Book of Kings is another one that has a million stories that would be great for any number of feature films.
Yeah.
I mean,
it is.
It's got deception and murder and resurrection.
Who doesn't like a resurrection?
We've got all, queens of Sheba.
Yeah.
It's got everything.
A little bit of soothsaying. I don't know if that was...
Astrology.
I'm
stoked about it.
Oh, I am too.
I
just went to a planetarium, so I'm ready. I like some astrology. Change my, every time I go, you learn something new. You learn something new every day.
Oh, that's a great way to live.
Mm-hmm. It is.
Just think this podcast is going to...
Oh, we're enlightening and expanding knowledge left and right.
It's
north and south.
It's the Lord's work.
It's the Lord's work. We got to do it.
Okay.
All
Okay,
right,
what are we
so the
talking
kings.
about?
We're
Okay,
talking
kings.
about the kings. So I said I wanted to do a little summary because
That's where I was. I'm interrupting you, only to go back to say
that I want to
that
give
you're
a summary.
Yes.
You're interrupting me to tell me.
We could definitely use a quick overview of what the Book of Kings is about because the women's Bible selections they feel random.
Well, yeah, they are kind of random.
Again, though, it's the stuff to do with women. But go ahead. Joanna is dying.
I'm dying. Well, I'm not dying. It was just because I get confused. I get confused. So I I go back and I'm like, ugh.
All right.
I don't know. But what I've decided this week, Sarah, is that I don't care as much about the Bible story because there's so many random people mentioned and stuff that I'm like, I'm only going to focus on the main characters. So we talked about David last week, obviously David and Goliath. Not last week, a couple weeks ago. But David was really interested to me because as a Catholic growing up, apparently I only knew the David and Goliath when he was a hero.
Right. Last week our dreams
and
were
then
crushed.
He fell,
yeah,
right?
Last episode. Yep.
So, but this week we join the land of kings, and really he was a king, David. They were looking for the king, which apparently we know will end up being Jesus as the King of Kings, right? He's eventually the dude, right? Am I right?
No,
in
the
thinking
thing
that?
is, I'm like, he was the King of Kings, and that's how that's how they treated him.
Well, that's what.
Does anybody know this?
Are you listening? It's just the Christians that think that.
Okay.
But first there was David, and David we thought was great for a while, and then he turned into like a real
jerk.
Real jerk. But God always loved him, never gave up on him. The last really bad thing he did was kill a guy so he could have his wife. He really liked the wife, and he was like, goodbye, Uriah, I'm going to kill you, and yay, I get the wife. They have a baby, Solomon. And Solomon, he promised this lady, because he felt bad, because he was like, oh, maybe you liked your husband. I'm sorry, I didn't ask you. So he said, you know what, your son can be king. Well, he got old, and he forgetful probably. I think it mentions that a little bit. And he had a bunch more wives. He kind of forgot about Solomon, and some other brother was just going to take over. So David was dying, after his crazy life.
Right.
But she was like, hold on, this guy's trying to be king, this other kid.
Yep.
So she was like, oh my gosh, David, remember you promised me my child would be King Solomon. And that's where we take off with kings. So that's my little synopsis. What do you think?
That was fantastic.
Was it good?
I know I keep on referencing, but that's the plot of The House of Dragons.
Right? I know, it's crazy.
I'm like, it actually is. My favorite thing that I learned is, so David, he's croaking at the beginning of Kings.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, that's the beginning.
And he's on his deathbed. He's telling Solomon, he's like, you must obey the Lord or whatever.
Yeah.
And then I think right after that, they plot to like kill a bunch of people or whatever. But
always,
the tidbit I loved is they say, I'm like, well, how did David die? And you look it up, and it's just like of old age.
Yeah.
70.
What?
I'm like, how come you got Abraham?
Yeah, 110.
Banging some lady.
Why?
He's
70?
like, I'm like, what?
You looked it up? That's
Yeah.
crazy. I thought
I know.
He had all these wives.
That's probably why he's like,
That's
70
probably why he
was old
died.
enough. Yeah.
Yeah, he was probably had dementia. You know that?
I know. He probably did.
That's what I'm thinking, because they said he started hanging out with weird women. Right?
I thought
Or is that
did.
Solomon?
Yeah,
Oh, that
we'll
was
get to
Solomon.
that part. That's another. I'm telling you what, this whole
did
thing
come-
is so great that we can't fit it all into an hour. So we'll just give you some highlights.
Highlights.
And go check it out for yourself. There's so much going on. And with the Victorian feminists bringing back lots of the same themes about motherhood,
And women.
expectations.
But you know what I noticed? They pull in a lot more current events in this chapter.
Okay, we can talk
not,
about those.
not our current events, but their current events.
Exactly.
To pull them in and be like, hey, look at this is affecting us. And then we have us going, hey, look, it's still affecting us.
Hey, look. And that's where, this starts out talking about.
When she came to talk and say Solomon's got to be king.
Yeah, Solomon's got to be king.
Sheba comes back and she's like, hi, remember me? You loved me so much. You killed my husband. And you said my son would be the... And it sounds like David was like on his deathbed, because he was like, what? That other kid is trying to take it over? Well, that's not right. So he took care of it. And he made sure Solomon took over.
So what's the first?
Well, the ladies talk about Bathsheba, and they're kind of irritated that she had to stand in front of the king. They were like, hold on. You killed her husband. and you promised her all this stuff because she's such a good lady, and then you make her stand before you and like basically bow to you and beg for you to say what you were going to say in the first place?
Yeah, exactly.
Annoying.
And that's probably where I've highlighted. David should have arisen from his bed and done reverence to this woman, his wife, bowing his face to the earth. Yet we find this Bible teaching the subservience of women to man, of the wife to the husband, of the queen to the king, ruling the world today.
Today. See, I wonder why they separate. Do they separate it in your book too? Where it says
the word today. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Why do they do that? Do you know?
I think that's just a flair thing, choice. They use a hyphen in the middle of it, or a dash. What's that? Hyphen, a dash? T-O-D-A-Y.
Yeah.
I think it's just to make a point.
I like it.
She goes on to say, a kneeling wife at this era's civilization is proof that the degradation of women continues from the time of Bathsheba to that of Alexandria.
Yeah, it's annoying.
Mm-hmm.
Sad. So they talk about that.
We're like, sad.
I'm telling you. We got to get to Sheba.
I'm not. I know. Okay,
I feel bad for Bathsheba. And by the way, just before we started this podcast, I was like, Bathsheba, Queen of Sheba. But I don't know. Anyways, I discovered a rabbit hole I want to go down later. I won't do it here, but
Ask
I think
our listener question.
I just want to know if the Queen of Sheba is related to David's Bathsheba, who his husband Uriah was killed by David and Solomon was born. Let me know. It's very important to me.
So before we move on to Queen of Sheba.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah, we got some other things.
This is what I want to talk about. We have a new contributor.
Oh, MJG. Who is she? Did you tell me?
Are going to love this. Matilda Jocelyn Gage. And this might blow your mind.
Is she a free thinker?
There's two. First of all, she is a free thinker. She's part of the free thought movement.
Is she in the society?
Yeah. Seems like the most fascinating woman. She has her own, like, what's it called? So there's a whole Matilda. You're like, say the words. I'm getting my laptop. So there's a whole Matilda Jocelyn Gage Center.
Oh,
she was now today. She was a free thinker, and she's mainly known for her contributions to women's suffrage. But she campaigned for Native American rights, abolitionism, and free thought. The thing that blew my mind. Have you ever heard of the Matilda effect?
No.
In science, usually it's in science, and that's the idea that women are not given credit for their scientific discoveries, and they call that the Matilda effect.
Oh, was she not given credit for things?
She was not given credit for how much she did for all of women's movements and suffrage, free thinking, and for this religious stuff, because in 1893, she wrote a little book called Women, Church, and State.
Ooh.
And it is available on the Gutenberg Project. Check the show notes. I will.
Wait a minute. That's before this book was released.
That is correct. And
oh my gosh,
amazing. We should totally
next book.
Next book. So she was not given credit for a lot of the work that she did. Some really groundbreaking stuff with this idea of talking about women and the separation of church and state.
Really?
And she must have been super cool and radical, because eventually the suffrage movement kind of like edged her out.
Okay. Well, they edged Elizabeth Cady Stanton out too.
Exactly.
Maybe all these ladies.
Exactly. And so after that, because she was an outspoken critic of the church teachings about the inferiority of women, in 1890, she formed the Women's National Liberal Union, which was the first organization in the United States dedicated to the separation of church and state.
Ooh.
I mean, she seems so totally cool. And she was really into, she's supporting women's rights to divorce and reproductive autonomy.
So actually, because I've been thinking about the separation of church and state, because, obviously like Oklahoma's trying to post the 10 Commandments and all that. And then I learned that, the whole reason public schools exist was so you could read the Bible. But these ladies, it's far enough along where they're like, well, so are they the beginning of the separation of church and state? I've been meaning to Google that history because that's been on my mind. A little busy.
Yeah.
A little busy, but I'm going to check that out. But I'm wondering if these ladies are the spark of separation of church and state. Are they? I think so.
I think so. We'll just call it. We can do whatever we want.
I mean,
we can just make shit up.
Well,
I'm just
no,
kidding.
but I am going to look that up.
I do know.
I'll expand your knowledge next week.
Talking about the separation of church and state, and if they were the ones that kind of made that happen, I noticed, did you notice in Kings, Elizabeth says something about how it's not separate in America?
Yeah. Yeah, that's what I mean. They're talking about several current events that they're like, hey, check this out. And I'm like, oh, if you were only here right now.
Well, I'll tell you what.
Check this out.
Matilda Jocelyn Gage. She seems so cool. And I'm going to tell you one other fact. You're going to fall out of your chair.
Oh, my gosh. Hit me up. I'm ready.
Her son-in-law was a gentleman known as L. Frank Baum.
Wait a minute. Wizard of Oz?
That is correct.
Wizard of Oz?
That is correct. Do you not love that?
It's fantastic.
And it says here that she was really influential on him.
Oh, obviously. Oh my gosh, that is beautiful.
And the writing in the Women's Bible is fantastic, and you can tell that she's a free thinker.
Oh.
She's a free thinker.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing.
Isn't that amazing?
This book, it's just like all these creative juices.
Gosh, I know.
And
so
enlightening.
Juicy. It's
enlightening.
so juicy.
All the enlightening. I just think people can't handle free thinkers. They really have a hard time with us.
People cannot handle us.
They have a hard time with us. Well, also called neurospicy nowadays.
That's what they're saying.
I think it's, it's like this. Convergence.
Yeah, exactly.
It's converging.
Very
neurospicy and free thinking.
And yes.
All together.
So the Book of Kings also includes another biblical story that used to just really jazz me out as a kid. Yeah. And that's the baby in half story.
Yeah. I mean, what a lesson. What a moral lesson to teach your youngins. Let me teach you this, youngins. Mira heard it for the first time today, and she was quite, she was like, what?
Because it gives you such a visual. So.
And then you're like, oh, makes total sense.
It makes sense.
It is a great, see, again, Bible is literature. Fantastic.
The story goes where there were two women.
And it was one of King Solomon's first trials, I think. One of his first, I think.
Oh, that's right, because the kings were the judges and everything. So,
yeah, it was basically, kings.
Yeah.
They're still around.
Kings. I really wish we had a king.
Oh, maybe your dreams will come true.
Geez.
Maybe.
No.
I think they're on the verge.
It's the most ridiculous idea. So, we're like two ladies, two babies. One of the ladies rolls over on one of her baby.
Yeah.
A baby dies.
They both have a baby the same day.
A baby dies.
This is like literally Judge Judy material.
It is. So the woman whose baby died, she swapped her dead baby
with a live baby.
One. And they're
no
both they're both freaking out.
No one will know.
No one will know.
She thought.
And King Solomon in court says, go ahead.
First they went to court. That's what they think. So they go to King Solomon, and
he's like, bring me a sword.
And they're like, she said, he said, she said, she's my baby. It's my baby. No one can figure out who's telling the truth. King Solomon comes up with the ultimate idea to say,
pressure test.
Hey, ladies, I hear you. I both hear you. I can't. You know what? We're just going to split that kid in half. You take half and you take half. Brilliant. Half and half. Split in half. Fair? Equal? Oh, man.
And the mother, the real mother.
You know it. How did you know she was the real mother, Sarah?
Because she said, no. You can let her have the baby. And
King Solomon, in all his manly wisdom, was like, she is the mother.
And then the crowd stood up. And they threw confetti.
And they were like, King Solomon
is so wise.
Oh, he's the wisest man I've ever met.
Fairest of them all.
And he became really famous, and people were like,
he is a
fanning out.
He is a man of solid judgment.
Yeah, because, it makes sense. Anybody that knows humans, if it was her baby, she would not want it cut in half. And the other lady was just heartless. She was like, absolutely.
Well, you could say she was heartless, but in a modern examination, she might have been having a little bit of trauma.
Oh, you got to bring it back to real life. Probably a little trauma.
And another little real life tidbit is our gal, Matilda, is like, listen, it's a cool story, interesting moral lesson, But however, this tale, like many other biblical story, is found embedded in the folklore myths of other peoples and religions. It's true.
King Solomon's not as cool as you thought.
They had
other people did it too.
yeah, exactly. Apparently this was in a pre-biblical Buddhist birth story.
Yeah. Sounds like someone did some little bit of plagiarism.
Yeah. But it's at this very end, it says, but let its history be real or unreal. The Bible accurately represents the condition of women under the Jewish patriarchal and the Christian monogamous religions.
Yeah.
MJG.
MJG. Yeah, she also brought up a court case of that day where the wife wanted to raise her kids in a certain religion, and the court said, absolutely not. The men win. You can't do that, right? So women just always getting the short end of the stick, I guess.
She totally is.
The short end of the stick.
She totally is. We all are. Let's get into Sheba. Let's get into Sheba. So Solomon, he's like king shit. You know what I mean? I don't know how else to put it.
So it makes sense that
People
Queen
are
of
into
Sheba
it.
would want to go see him.
Queen of Sheba.
She heard about him.
She heard about him, and she was like, I need to go see if this guy is as smart and cool as everybody says. And did you notice in the writings that I kind of get the sense that Elizabeth kind of really thinks Solomon's pretty awesome?
Really?
Yeah. No?
I don't know.
Or I don't know if she thinks he's awesome, but she's just not that like biting about it.
No, she didn't say anything bad about him. He's actually like, basically, he sounds like he was a human that had empathy and
smarts.
Could.
Empathy and smarts.
Yes.
So the Queen of Sheba, she's a super cool lady. We're looking this up. We actually think she's Queen Makeda. Makeda, what's her real name? Maybe from Ethiopia. I say her real name and maybe. I don't really know. But she was a very smart, powerful woman. And
a leader.
She comes to visit.
An
She was
equal.
a leader.
She was an equal.
An equal.
In
she
the
comes
Bible.
to visit him. She brings him a bunch of crap, asks him special riddles.
It sounded like she just wanted to pick his brain.
Wanted to pick his brain. Ask him
She's
special
like, you
riddles.
seem smart.
Talk about some astrology stuff, because that was like a real life thing back then.
Yeah. Isn't that funny?
I know. Elizabeth says this is the first account which we have in the Bible of a prolonged rational conversation with a woman on questions of public policy.
Yeah. First time.
The first time.
And she, she matched with, he treated her as an equal. That's probably why she likes him so much. He didn't send her away, right?
No, they swapped stories about astrology.
Yeah.
So the part where
he said Solomon did not suggest to the queen that she was out of her sphere, that her home duties, children, and philosophy of domestic life were the proper subjects for her consideration. But instead he talked with her as one sovereign should with another.
I love that.
Right? That's why they like him so much. That's why ECS likes him so much.
I went down a rabbit hole because of hearing that she posed questions to him in the form of riddles. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, where is it? I'm going back in the Bibes to see where it is. And I guess it's not written out, but it may be in some other
sacred text.
Sacred text.
How many sacred texts are there, do you think?
Not enough.
I know.
There's got to be more than the one people keep on waving around.
I know,
you know what I'm saying?
There's got to be so many more.
And then I loved where they were talking about, when I say they, who is this? Is this MJG? MJG.
Yeah.
Talking about how astrology was very much a part of these Abrahamic religions.
Yeah, yeah.
The full moon also possessed a religious significance to the Jews. The agricultural feasts taking place at the full moon, which were called Sabbaths.
Yes, which is rest as well. That's where the word Sabbath.
Solomon, also, whether looked upon as historical or mythical character, is philologically shown to have been connected with the planetary system. Sol, Om, On, signifying
the sun.
That's right, girl.
The sun. Yeah, very, this all makes sense, right? Like, these are like stories that the Native Americans tell and stuff.
That's
where
right.
you make stories about the stars. This stuff all makes sense. And they're like,
you see so many similarities. You don't see a lot of animal stuff, which is some of the, like when I think of Native American mythology, animals are as much a part of that as people.
Oh, true.
That's why this is very...
Well, but they talk about the trees.
there's a snake.
There's a snake.
There's a snake.
There is
There's
a snake.
a lot of asses.
Lot of white.
But they aren't
and-
do you know what I mean? They're not like making moves.
right.
The snake might be the last animal that made a move. I really need somebody to correct
I don't
me
know.
on that.
Well, and also, hey, the donkeys did some stuff. Remember that donkey that talked? That was pretty cool.
Oh, you're right.
Yeah, so there's it.
Balaam's ass.
Yeah. See?
That donkey could see angels.
That's right.
I'm sorry, I
God.
forgot my donkeys. You know what I mean?
Don't forget about
Like,
your
I can't-
donkeys.
I don't know.
But Arabian Nights.
So-
this is a lot about Arabian Nights and how this Arabia is really a hotbed of knowledge.
That is correct.
And that I found very interesting. I did not know that there was a Christian Dark Age. Did you know this?
What
Yeah.
does that mean?
So, well, they were talking about how Arabia was like where all the knowledge is and where a lot of
Where
these
civilization
words,
started.
yeah, numbers
No
and
big deal.
Yeah, no big deal. But it says
I thought it started in America.
Arabian wisdom made the southwestern portion of European continent brilliant with learnings, and it was during that time that the Christian Dark Ages were taking place. A time when, like the Bourbons of a later date, Christians learned nothing. A time when no heresy arose because no thought was allowed.
What?
Yeah, the Christian Dark Ages, when there was no progress because there was no doubt. I believe we are
Boom.
we are-
Bam. What?
Yeah.
No.
So is
Huh?
this the America Dark Ages? I'm just
Yes.
asking.
Look, I'm like, yes.
Yes. we do need a film crew.
We need a
yeah.
yes.
Yeah, the Christian Dark Ages.
What?
Right.
Oh my gosh. You know what? When you read books, you get ideas.
I know. That's why they're trying to ban them. That's why
I'm
they
like,
ban the
holy
books.
cow.
Yeah.
So this does make me want to really, really read the whole Bible Kings because of this astrology stuff. But maybe it's just because MJG, she sells it. You got to read this part in the book.
Yeah,
we'll
it's
spare
very-
you
it's very
all of
detailed.
that stuff. Before we move super past Solomon, I love where ECS. So there's a passage they have out here, which is it's Kings 1 Kings 11. But King Solomon loved many strange women, together with the daughter of Pharaoh, women of the Moabites, Ammonites, Zidonians, and
All those people
and
from
Hittites?
different
Is it
different
Hittites?
I don't know.
Ladies from Hittites have little
Hades.
titties.
Could be. They had some crazy towns back
They
then.
did. I mean, so and Elizabeth
Some
goes, this is a
wowzers.
sad story of Solomon's defection and degeneracy. It is impossible. So he had like just hundreds of women. This
He
is
had
where
700 wives, princesses, and
Whoa.
300 concubines.
That's like not even, again, in the time space continuum.
I mean,
physical.
But
possibility.
Sarah,
Was that
he was a
metaphorical?
poet. That's why.
Oh, that's why.
You're a poet? Bring me the ladies.
That's what. This
But
is where.
Can I do my favorite quote from, only because Mira had to tell me what it meant. I was
Please
like,
do.
how do you know what that word means? And
Okay.
she's like, because it's in Inside Out too. And I was like,
Okay.
makes
Do
sense.
tell. Do tell.
So this is a sad story. This is obviously Elizabeth Cady Stanton. This is a sad story of Solomon's defection and degeneracy. As the Queen of Sheba did not have 700 husbands, she had time for travel and the observation of the great world outside her domain. It is impossible to estimate the ennui. Do you know what that means?
Yeah. Boredom.
Yeah. 1,000 women must have suffered crowded together with only one old gentleman to contemplate. But he probably solaced their many hours with some of his choice songs, so appreciative of the charms of beautiful women.
It is probable that his little volume of poems was in the hand of every woman. That's what, okay. So she's a little sass on that. A little bit.
Poet. She's like, oh, Solomon, 700 wives. Where did he have time to even talk to Queen of Sheba?
Right. And then he's like answering riddles about astrology. He's like, I got 700 wives ragging on me.
I'm telling you.
Come on.
I'm sorry. Just
That
doesn't-
is so amazing.
I love it. I love it. Those poor wives.
The senility of old men is well illustrated in the case of Solomon, despite biblical reference to his great wisdom, as we learn that when he became old, he was led away by strange women, worshiping strange gods to whom he erected temples and offered sacrifices. So that is true. He started to build like all kinds of temples.
Notice how it's not his fault. The strange women pulled him away. They pulled him. Was it him?
How dude like is it to get 700 wives and then blame women?
Yeah, right? Isn't that funny? It's so, like, such a long stretch of imagination that...
I'm like, maybe, knock it in half, 350.
It's still not good at that number. It's a little crazy.
It's totally insane. And that is what the Book of Kings, from what I understand, is about a bunch of kings and how they keep on effing things up.
Yeah.
And Solomon.
Because they're not, remember, they're supposed to be looking for the perfect king. And so basically Kings goes through, this guy tried, and this guy tried, and this guy tried. But we still haven't found him.
But there isn't.
And so.
There isn't a perfect king.
I think that's what we're finding out today in 2025.
Right. No kings.
No kings. No King's Day.
Okay. So astrology. We got that. All right.
Well, polygamy.
Okay. Talk about it.
Well, obviously 700 wives. Obviously, there's some polygamy going on, correct? It's very shoved in your face, right? So it says, it is upon the teachings of the Old Testament, and especially from this statement in regard to Solomon, that the Mormons of Utah largely based their polygamous doctrines, okay? Because he was able to marry 700 wives, right? So they used it. But what the ladies say is like, well, at least the Mormons have progressed a little farther to give their wives some rights, whereas they
just got poetry books.
Well, you get a little poetry book, but the Mormons have advanced their treatment of women from the time of Solomon, while revelations of Joseph Smith commended plural marriages. The system and the name of concubinage was entirely omitted, so you couldn't have a concubine, right? So each woman taken is a wife, and they have rights. So she's like, at least the Mormons give you that. The people
That's good advertising. They're like, Mormons, we don't have concubines.
We don't have concubines. It's a little bit better. Right. It's a little bit better. But there's in the polygamy in New York, Chicago, London, Paris, and other parts of the Christian world. Women don't have any legal rights. The mistress neither being recognized as wife or her children even as legitimate. But at least if you're a Mormon, polygamy grants Mormon respect to the second, the third, and all subsequent wives. Be a Mormon.
Be a Mormon.
It's a little bit better.
There's
your lesson.
It's a little bit better.
It's a little bit better.
It's so good.
For women. Not much. At least you'll be called a wife and not a Jezebel.
That's what we want to get into.
Ooh,
we'll get into. So then the Lord whips up some prophets because he's like, these kings are like, they need some help or something, right? Is that why he does it? We don't know why the Lord does this stuff. It's mysterious, although he writes a lot. So, the history of Elijah, the prophet.
Yes, these prophets
that
happens. The thing about prophets that is different than kings that I've, in my short research from the Women's Bible, is that prophets do magic stuff, right? And kings just, rule.
Do whatever the F they want.
Yeah.
Right.
Like they don't need to do any magic.
Right.
They don't need to resurrect anybody. But prophets, different story.
So that's
what. So they were like, the kings are losing. Let's bring in some prophets.
This dude, Elijah,
man of God,
brings a child back to life.
I know.
I know. I'm reading the same book.
Yeah.
So who's he bring back to life? Somebody shows up.
A widow. That she liked him, right? Mm-hmm. She was like, oh, you look like a man of God. I trust you. Of course. And then there is a big theme of women just like ridiculously taking care of these people because that's what women do.
Right.
Which our ladies
That's how
are
you
like
that's how you get a spot in the Bible is to just the self-sacrifice.
self-sacrifice.
That self-sacrifice is the casting couch of the Bible. You know what I'm saying?
On the nose. On the nose.
Saying.
On
You
the
want to get
nose.
your name in the Bible?
Be selfless.
Be selfless for a man.
A man or the Lord.
A man.
Who is a man.
Even though he's supposed to be a spirit, whatever.
Yeah.
So Elijah, does she have a son?
Well,
the son of the women falls sick.
Yep.
There was no breath left in him.
He's dead. There's no breath.
So Elijah brings him back. And this is the first mention of bringing people back to life. And so that's like sorcery and magic. Also, it could be a balloon.
A balloon! Right? And this is another thing I'm looking into.
I know. So says this is the first record we have of the restoration of the dead to life in the Bible. So I shouldn't say resurrection, right?
I
don't know.
Yes.
I hear people are touchy about that word. If
Really?
If you're like Christian. So anyways, restoration of the dead to life in the Bible. It is also the first of any one ascending into heaven in a chariot of fire with horses of fire. Probably Elijah knew how to construct a balloon. Much of the ascending and the descending of seers, of angels, and prophets, which astonished the ignorant, was accomplished in balloons. This is the part that got me. A lost art for many centuries. Yeah. I was like, I'm sorry, ladies. What? Was there balloon art? There was balloon art?
Well, I don't know if that was it's like travel. People were trying it out.
But like back 2,000 years ago, they're like, you know what was hot back then?
Balloon art.
Balloon art.
Balloon art.
That's so
and if you could
awesome.
Make it look like it has wings, you're extra.
And where do we find this info? We'll get to that.
Well,
I looked it up a smidge bit, but I got to go deeper.
Balloon
well, there's like research, like the top, like surface stuff, like the Googling, but there's other places you can
look, that you can dig.
I keep on saying
deeper.
Google. I don't only use Google. Listeners.
Yeah. You got some extra resources.
Yeah.
Yeah. The balloon thing is interesting. And actually, I went to a planetarium last weekend and it was about the moon. And I found it because when the balloon thing, I started to think about this because when people first saw a picture of the moon and started thinking about the moon, I was thinking about free thinkers because there was someone that was like, I'm sure there was like a lot of religion going on, but someone was looking at the moon going, I think we can go there. I think I could touch it, right? So some guy thought of it, and one of the first
guy,
it was a dude.
Okay.
Oh, sorry, it was in the planetarium show.
Oh.
He thought about going to the moon, and his first thought, this was back a long time ago, if he could hook up a bunch of geese, they could fly to the moon. So but how long ago would that have to be for someone not to know, like, hey, if you go above a certain level,
right,
the geese won't live,
right.
So it was a long time ago.
Right.
So if someone saw a balloon going, it was easy to fool people back then.
But to fool them with balloons is where it's just so awesome.
Yeah, but think about it. When did balloons first start?
That's what I'm like, it's really tripping me out, man.
I know.
I'm like, what is a balloon? What were they using for balloons?
Right? What did they? It wasn't
Fabrics?
Latex, right? Yeah, it would have to be fabric.
Fabrics, like a sail.
And then what they gas?
And it was enough for the Victorian ladies to be like, yeah, that was real popular. That's been in phases. Balloon.
Yeah, right. It's been out, but maybe it'll come back. But obviously they would use fire. I'm thinking hot air balloon because the chariots of fire. If you think of like a lantern,
absolutely going
up, right?
Oh my gosh,
right?
I think if I had to go back and be like biblical times, I would totally be
a balloon maker,
or
like
freaking
a people
sorceress.
You would totally be a sorceress.
That is a very good compliment. Thank you. Yeah. And I would have like balloon art down pat, but it'd be secret and people wouldn't know.
Oh, some people would know.
And I'd be like, bring me your dead children.
I will rise them up with chariots of fire. Okay. You'd be getting all the cash.
I'd be getting all the gold coins.
All the gold
Which
coins.
I would give away once Baby J showed up, though, because I'd be like, I like your style.
Elijah's got to run into Jezebel.
Yes.
They talk a lot about Jezebel.
Well, yeah, Jezebel. She's a gal.
Basically, all she does is help her husband. Basically, it's just that selflessness. Jezebel, but she gets a bad name because they actually use, that's a derogatory term now. And it's got to be from the Bible.
But that's because she worshipped a different God.
Yeah, That's the only bad thing she did. I thought she was like a hoochie mama, That's
I did too.
when you hear the term,
Right,
and then
a
I read this.
A temptress.
I read this and I'm like, she just wrote a letter and pretended she was her husband because her husband couldn't get himself. He was all upset and sad because some guy wouldn't listen to him. So she just like took over and said, you know what? Do you mind if I pretend to be you? I'll write the king and get some stuff done and kill some people. And she's not a hoochie mama. She's just a lady that gets things done.
Right.
And she did it for
and
her
people
husband.
think she's satanic.
Yeah,
So they talk about her.
They say she's like the most evil person in the Bible. And I'm like, but I don't think so. I didn't think so. And I don't think the ladies thought that either, honestly, because they were like, Jezebel's death, like her life, was a tragedy of evil. The whole thing was just a tragedy.
It was a tragedy. She gets a bad rap.
She does. She does.
She totally does.
It says, I like this because, so Martin Luther started Lutheranism, right? He was the first, he revised the Bible, which is funny because these ladies, all they want to do, revise the Bible.
Mm-hmm.
Martin Luther did it, but it says, all we know about Jezebel is told to us by a rival religionist who hated her.
Exactly.
As the Pope of Rome hated Martin Luther. Or as an American APA now hates a Roman Catholic. I'm not sure what an APA is, but I'm thinking.
And I'm sorry, I didn't look that up, and I caught that too.
You did.
Mm-hmm.
I wondered. I was
I'll look
like,
it up later. I put it in the show notes.
I was like, the Press Association? I don't think so.
Yeah.
I don't think it's the press.
Yeah.
But an American APA
I'm like, I know APA style.
hates the Roman Catholic. But anyways, nevertheless, even the Jewish historian, evidently biased against Jezebel by his theological prejudices, as he is, does not give any facts, which warrant the assertion that Jezebel was any more satanic than an ancient Israelitish gentleman to whom her theological views were opposed. Basically, she just had opposing views.
That's it.
She was a free thinker.
They don't exactly. She's satanic.
That was it,
Ridiculous.
right?
Yeah.
So, anyways, I have new respect for Jezebels.
I do too.
I think I might even want to be one. Just kidding.
Yeah.
Yes.
It is a great chapter. We only covered a few touch points, but we hope this hour has brought you enough Queen of Sheba and just a smattering of Jezebel talk and got you inspired miracles and got you inspired in balloon art. So let us know if you want to start a balloon art club. We trust the time you've spent with us expanded your knowledge a bit, or even better, inspired you to hit up a rabbit hole or two. We're edging closer to the New Testament. But next week, we'll be taking a women's Bible break before the book of Esther and putting out an unofficial, official surprise hodgepodge renegade episode.
Renegades.
You have time to check out our show notes for info on how to send us a text or leave a voicemail with comments, questions, songs, or poetry, or historical or biblical tidbits of your own. We'd love to mention you in our super special episode.
Yeah, wouldn't you want your name on air? You can also find us on TikTok and YouTube, where we are always looking for like-minded pals and collaborators. And we know there are a lot of you because we watch your stuff.
Yeah.
Right? And so, let's get together. Let's hear your thoughts. Speaking of pals, why not try the Force a Friend to Listen to This Podcast challenge? Just do it this week. Send this podcast to a friend. Better yet, when you see a friend or someone that you even mildly like, or maybe, you just ran into them, you work with them. Maybe you're in line at the grocery store. You just kind of know them. Grab their phone and be like, hey, have you seen Biting? And they'll be like, I don't know how to podcast. And you just say, take your phone.
Just press play.
And then you get it on and just press play and be like, you're welcome. And they'll be dumbfounded. And
it's called podcast bombing.
I love it. It's
Even
a new thing.
I don't think we say bombing. A podcast sprinkling.
Sprinkling. Sharing. Showering people with the podcast. And you do it. It's a TikTok trend that we just started right now. You could take a video. Bring a friend. Bring a friend while you're doing this. Let us know how it goes and send us a video. Thanks for listening and have an expansive week.